Good evening, I'm Sarah Gannart, and welcome to my studio. So, the Gibberer, more of the Gibberer, yeah. Yes, right. Having that. Starting with the chisel. Yeah. Just trying to remember what I was doing and why I was doing it and things like that. This feels like it could do with a little bit of sharpening up. Put that down before I jab myself. got to get myself another leather strop. No, I'll rephrase that. I really ought to find my other leather strop. As I do have one somewhere. I keep coming across it and thinking, oh, that's where it is. I must remember that. Then I keep coming across it and thinking, oh, that's where it is. I must remember that. Okay, so I'll carve this down below the level of the outer frame and then down to the point where it looks like it meets up with that. Since it's part of the same wall. Right, so good evening everybody again, or anybody who's watching. Thank you for dropping in. So, if you're wondering what a Gibberer is, well, I guess you shouldn't be, because if you're watching, well, maybe, I was about to say, some of you who may be watching this will be watching it because you saw it in the Hearthstone category, probably right down at the bottom. If you bother to scroll down that far. And in which case, if you are watching it from there, then you already ought to know what a Gibberer is, because it's out of your game. It was one of the cards released earlier this year, late last year. I actually can't remember now. And if you're watching it from creative and potentially have no idea neither what a Gibberer is nor Hearthstone, that's a Gibberer. Friendly looking fellow, isn't he? Nice and cuddly. There must be some pets somewhere of these things, I'm guessing, in Hearthstone, because that's a feral one. And for there to be feral ones, there has to be domesticated ones. But that's what we are in the process of carving. This is all, sometimes it gets called block carving or rough carving. Just getting a lot of things into sort of the shape that you want them to be in. A slight mix of stuff. The banner, for example, is almost complete, not quite, but almost. This is nowhere near. but it is getting there. And I'm just putting a cut around here and the outline of this frame, so that when I carve, I don't carve the frame away, which can easily happen if you're not careful. The grain angle, the angle of the wood grain around here is virtually parallel to the surface and straight up and down, and it is one of the most awkward directions for some things. There are times when I'd love to carve in grain. I know it doesn't look as good, but in grain will come straight up out of the wood, just because I wouldn't have problems of which way do I have to carve this, because when you're carving you always carve, you try and carve across the grain. Carving with the grain is quite awkward to do. And it makes getting into areas like this here really quite difficult in a way. Just because you kind of can't do that, you've got to come in that way, but the angles and yeah. Whoever said carving was easy? Wasn't me. Right, I know I want to adjust that a little bit. That frame's a bit thick, but that's a detail I can leave for the moment. So I'm now going to try and get into this corner. I'm trying to do it without splitting the wood, but it's really difficult because the grain angle makes it want to split very easily. I may end up, well, I probably am going to end up with a small gouge. get into the corner. Feral, wild, uncontrolled. So generally speaking, something that's been living in the wild. So a feral cat, for example, would be one that's lived its life in the wild. As I say, it usually distinguishes, so if you're talking about cats, for example, you'd be talking about a feral cat as opposed to a domestic cat. It distinguishes one that's lived in or lives in the wild from one that lives with people. Yeah, not say untamable, I don't think, but certainly wild. How does Twitch do that? So what I want to do with this is carve it down enough to distinguish it from the frame and make it look like it connects with that, and not jab myself with the shavings either. I was about to say I love carving with a sharp chisel, and I always do try and carve with a sharp chisel, but when you can just, as I was doing just a moment ago, just gently shave the wood almost, because the chisel is sharp, it's kind of nice, and I love the sound it makes when you get a good cut. I hate having to carve with the grain. Come on, there's a little bump in there that I'm just trying to get out. Probably for no apparent reason, because I'm probably going to carve it further down on it in a minute. But anyway, good evening to you both, Wolfie, and to Vicky Online. How are you both this evening? Nice to see you in the studio again. Ah, that's fantastic, Vicky. Oh, Vicky Online. Sorry, should use your proper name.
It's been us making it through all our lives, and I can't help but think of how cruel it would have been without you by my side. I could feel how we've
Just for a minute then I suddenly thought, did I actually record this session? I do record all the videos here locally. Or I try and record all the videos here locally. Occasionally I forget. I have to get Twitch to give me a copy, but I record in 1080, but I only broadcast in 720. So I prefer to locally record if I can remember. I usually do, but occasionally I forget. At some point, and this is one of those round to it jobs, I will make time lapses of a lot of these things like this, but it takes an awfully long time to make a time lapse of something like a 20-hour carve. Because it's handling something like 20 gigabytes of video to do it. Right, let me spin that around and have a look at what that looks like the right way around. So what I'm looking at here is the impression I get from this and that. And I know that wants to be steeper. And that looks not to be the same as that. So at which point I try and decide what to do about that. Or indeed actually have to do anything at all about it. And I may not do anything about it. I may just wait and see. Yes, might just wait and see, because whilst in the original image this is one wall, there's no real reason why it has to be that way at the moment. It kind of looks like two. Perhaps there's a brick or something underneath the ear here, which you can't see. So I probably will leave it like that. So I guess kind of the next thing is carve this bit of wood, just this little bit here away, and then we'll perhaps do his teeth, or at least his mouth. Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, gremlin. Yeah. I suppose he does sort of look like a gremlin. Right. Actually, I didn't really watch those films. Didn't particularly. I didn't particularly like them, to be honest. I think I've seen bits of the odd one, literally sort of a couple of minutes type of thing, but I've never watched a complete film, gremlin film. Yeah, why not? Okay. Talking to myself again, you see. I suppose what I should be doing is saying what I'm thinking out loud, but it probably wouldn't make as much sense, because I have a tendency to talk in shorthand to myself. I sort of, do half sentences like, yeah, I could, and maybe, and I don't know, and I sort of talk like that when I talk to myself. Even when I'm talking to myself in my head. So what I was just thinking about then is actually that I was going to carve this as sort of an extension of that wall, but I've just changed my mind. So I'm going to carve it more or less down to that level, but I'm going to leave it very slightly proud as though it's it's a sort of a brick in front. Just to give this background a little bit sort of more interest, but don't want to give it too much interest. The main focus of this, of course, is primarily the Gibberer. So I want to make the background interesting enough not to be boring, but not so interesting that you spend all the time looking at the background and not the main subject. Now what I will probably do is sort of carve brick lines in this background here, or not necessarily brick lines but block lines, stone lines. It's a stone wall, so just something like that to stop it being just a plain shape, plain flat shape. In fact, your eye is a bit of a weird, or your eye and brain together, I guess, a bit weird sometimes. If something is untextured, it's smooth. You'll notice it more than if it was actually textured. I guess, I don't know, maybe it's got something to do with sort of nature where, you know, human-wise we don't often see really smooth things and therefore it catches our attention. Has your table been built yet, Wolfie, or are you still designing things on it? Right, we'll leave that like that, but we'll just... So I've got a level. Now with this I'm in danger of splitting wood off the side like I just did. It is always and should always be in the back of your mind while you're carving off a piece of wood. And again, it's the grain angle that causes this to be an issue for me now. So if the wood was sort of cross grain, then it's less likely to want to split off at the side. Right, that'll do for a level. Just something else, a little bit more detail in the background without going too detailed. So, power tool time. Are you still waiting for it to be made? It's really sharp tools, Vicky. The wood is not hard. It's hard wood. The wood itself isn't fantastically hard. There are lots of harder woods, but it's not a soft wood either. It's quite resilient. I'm not about to. I suppose what I can do is, so it says just looking for a suitable place like in here. If I push my nail into it, I can just about make a mark if I hit the right spot. But it's not soft by any means. It is literally the sharpness of the tools that make it look soft. That and the actual the wood itself cuts nicely. It gives a nice sharp edge. In actual fact, soft woods, the softer the wood, the sharper the chisel that you need to cut it. Otherwise you get really sort of mushy edges and things like that. You don't get a really nice finish on it. Yes, but technically, I mean, it's one of these things that's funny. I mean, technically it's a hardwood, if I remember correctly, which means the tree drops its leaves in winter. Which is funny because balsa, which you can rip, you can scratch off with your fingers, is technically a hard wood, but it's really soft. I always find that one actually funny. Yeah, no, it's these. They're not quite. They are razor sharp, but they're not quite as sharp as a scalpel. But these are really razor sharp chisels, and you need to keep them that way. You will see me probably, I don't know, about every 15 minutes of use, I will take this pad. This is just leather, and this is a polishing compound. So it's a mild abrasive, and so I'm laying down some of the mild abrasive on the leather, and the leather is both holds the abrasive and is slightly soft, if you like, which helps. And then what I do is I take this chisel and I lay it not flat, but with the bevel at the right angle, so that the bevel is flat, because there's an angle. You can just about see it there. There's an angle on the end coming up like that. This side's flat, that side comes up. This is the cutting edge. I hold it flat and I draw it backwards. I only need to do this sort of, I don't know, 5 to 10 times. Doesn't need a great deal. And then having done that, what I then do, and you might just notice it goes really shiny, turn it over, put it down on the other side and just draw it backwards just once. What this is doing is when you draw this backwards, you are actually very lightly abrading the edge. It does two things. One is it does bring the edge, because it's at an angle, to a point, so it sharpens it. But it's the edge. When you do that sort of thing, the edge is a bit like tin foil. It bends really easily and doesn't really stand up too much. It's really sharp, but what happens is as I'm drawing it backwards, the edge curls up like this, which actually makes it blunt. So when I turn it back that way and draw it backwards, what I'm doing is just flattening out that edge. Now this edge then is really sharp, but it doesn't last very long, you know, about 5-10 minutes of carving, and you're gradually just chipping away at the edges here. So over time what will happen is this blade will just get shorter, but really slowly. It's the chisel makes it look easier. It is the sharper your chisel, the easier it is to carve. Actually, using blunt chisels is dangerous. It's less dangerous to use a sharp chisel than it is to use a blunt one. Because with a blunt one, you use far too much force to try and get it to go through the wood, and you're not cutting the wood. You're sort of just trying to push the blade between the fibres, as opposed to actually sort of slicing it through. And so you use a heck of a lot of force, and if it just pops out the wood, you sort of, you end up throwing yourself across the desk, or if God forbid, as I say, you're trying to draw, you're a beginner and you're trying to draw it back towards yourself and you're not actually controlling it properly, that's when you get dangerous things happening. That's why I only ever use my fingers to drive the chisel when I drive it this way, but also because it's sharp, it will actually cut really sort of with little force at all. As you can, I'm not trying really hard to do this because I don't want to carve this down too much, but I am just using 2 fingers, and I am carving wood. And also, I wasn't controlling it properly because I should use 2 hands, but that was just an illustration. And removing the carbon buildup from the burning. On that, yes, same thing, mild abrasive. Only this doesn't have a sharp edge, so this one doesn't get any sharper. Although, having said which, I do sort of run it that way as well occasionally, but yes. that as well, core muscles. For those people that don't understand, core muscles was asking me about cleaning the tips on pyrography, or polishing them. When you do pyrography, effectively what's happening with pyrography, when this hot tool touches the wood, some of the liquid which is in the wood fibres, not quite sap, but some of the liquid comes out and it cooks and it carbonises, sticks to the tool, and it's like a crystal and it can actually scratch what you're doing. The pen doesn't run very smoothly, so you don't get consistent application of heat and things like that. So you clean it. Well, you don't clean the tools with anything abrasive. In fact, generally speaking, I just use a paper towel. But occasionally, very occasionally, I will polish it, and polishing it just makes it run smoother as well. And I use exactly the same thing. I just take that, put some polish on it, and just run the tool over it, and it polishes it up quite nicely. Right, teeth. So we're going to use the power tool for this. It's not impossible to do with a chisel, but I'm just being lazy. So what I'm going to do here is start with this thing. It's a sharp spike. It's actually an abrasive. It's a diamond tip. So this is kind of like I'm going to sand it almost, but rather than a cutter. But this has got a sharp point on it. So okay, you're going to be awkward. Probably this one's blunt. Yeah, it's not cutting very well. So this one, core muscles, is playing a little bit of pyrography in that it's heating the wood up, and no, that's not going at all. What I should be able to do with this, and I don't know if this one's just worn out. I'll try. I've got another one of that size and a slightly bigger one. You do wear the diamonds off, especially if they overheat. No, that does not want to. Okay, I'll try the third one I've got. And if that fails, then I will go to using... I wanted to use those because they've got really sharp points and they're quite a thin cutter. This one's got some... should have some stuff left on it. The stream page shouldn't be saying magic dots. Excuse me while I take a look. No, I've not finished it. But let me have a... Twitch has been a bit funny. I've changed it twice the other day and it still went back to, and on the third time it worked. But it shouldn't be saying magic dots. Huh. Thank you for letting me know about that. It is supposed to have changed and didn't. Thank you, Vicky, for noticing that. No, it's we've got what? A couple of colours. About a quarter of the way through. I may tomorrow. What I may do is do this tomorrow night and then do some more of that maybe Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, Twitch the other night. I changed that title. I know, because I looked at it and it didn't change. So I went and did it again and it didn't change. And I did it a third time and it changed. And now it's gone back to what it was. I have no idea why well, Twitch. I think the tip of that just broke off. Yeah, I think the tip's broken. Yeah. This isn't cutting in the wood though. What I would normally do for this, I think the tip's gone, is you can use this really rather nicely to sort of outline something. I don't normally sort of do much carving with it, but you can outline with it, and it's like a carving stop cut. You can then come in with a bigger cutter and work around it without worrying too much about damaging the edges. But for some reason on this wood here, it just does not want to go through the wood. Yeah, in fact it has its the diamonds have disappeared off the front there. It's just overheating the wood. So, okay, well that's only a minor issue. So I've got 2, 3. Am I better doing? Yes, I'm better doing that to start with, I think. Well, now we know we've come back in with one of the other cutters. So this really is a cutter rather than an abrasive. So this one shouldn't overheat the wood like that. So just outlining the mouth cavity, if you like, here. So I know where the teeth are, and then I can dig out the wood that's the mouth. Yeah, sort of. They do, but they're not ideal. They are impact resistant. So from that particular perspective, they will act as a safety glass. But of course, that's not all that safety glasses are, and they don't offer any protection from the side impact or infiltration from the side. So yes, you are perfectly right there, Vicky. And he says, trying to remember where my actual safety glasses are, because I do have some. It is a risk assessment, and the danger that these glasses will not protect against is this tip shattering, basically. And I suppose, therefore, yes, you are perfectly right. Because at this moment in time, I'm happy with the level of risk, but if you would prefer me to wear upper safety glasses, as I don't know where they are, I would have to go looking for them. So I would have to stop carving. So if you'd like me to stop carving and go look for the glasses, I am quite happy to do so. And what I'd probably do though is stop carving and clean up, and then do some more of the elephant for the remainder of the stream. And then I'd look for the glasses tomorrow. No, you're perfectly right though. You are it is. If I was using one of my big cutters, the big carbide cutters on the other the hanging motor, I definitely would be wearing them, because for a couple of things. One is they throw wood chips into the air, and whilst these are a glass lens, and therefore and they also have an impact resistance, so they're sort of semi-safety glasses, which is what they were bought as. They won't protect against a big cutter hitting the lens, and also as I'm working here, if they throw stuff up and it hits underneath and goes up under the edge of the glass, they don't actually stop projectiles in that sort of way. And the big cutters do throw off quite large chips of wood along this sort of line at reasonably high speed, and so I definitely would be wearing them for that. For this, as you can see, it basically turns it into dust, and the biggest problem with this dust is breathing it more than anything else. But you are right, these cutters, generally speaking, don't shatter. I don't think I've ever had one that has shattered. I've bent them, but I don't think they're shattered, because what happens is they go, well, there's not enough weight, but some of the larger cutters will go off centre, and then the weight, the centrifugal force just bends them, and this thing flutters all over the place. But yes, you are perfectly right. Sort of, especially with the diamond. If I use a diamond ball, for example, then some of the diamond, because it's basically just glued on, some of the diamond chips can actually come off at high speed, and they would definitely be a risk. This cutter is blunt, and I am reasonably happy with this, but you are perfectly correct. And what I will do for the next stream is I will look for, he says, wondering if they're over there, my safety glasses, and I'll actually wear them. Unfortunately not. They are, I know they're around somewhere. As soon as I find them, and I will look for them, I will wear them. How's the kitty today? I haven't seen him for a little while tonight. He keeps one during the day today. He kept, because I work from home, and it's been raining outside all day today. So about every couple of hours, he comes in completely soaking wet, and comes in and talking to me, probably telling me just how wet it is out there. He comes in, meows for about 30 seconds, waits to have his head stroked, and then walks out. So he's perfectly fine. Junior was asleep behind me, just down here. He's disappeared. I don't know where he's gone. Felix doesn't like me particularly, so he's laid with Lady Zara, and I have no idea where Emmy is. She hides. If any of them come in, well, any of them apart from Felix, I'll see if they want to appear on stream. Felix, I know won't, just because Felix does not like being picked up. He objects strenuously to being picked up. In fact, he objects strenuously to if he thinks he's being restricted. And picking him up is a means of restricting him, and he objects, he howls, his paws, I don't know if you've seen cats sometimes, the paws come out, all four paws at, about as right angles from the body. He does that anytime you pick him up, and then he doesn't like it, and he will then go and hide from you for the rest of the day, just so that you don't do it again. Yeah, but Felix and Junior are quite old pussycats now. I actually don't know how old they are, but they're several years old. think they're must be about 8 years old, something like that. Emmy, I think, is probably about 2 years old, and Theo, of course, is now about, it must be about 15 months, I think, now. He's a youngster. And of course, Junior was a feral cat, actually. Talking of feral, as we were earlier, he was a feral cat. He was completely wild. He'd obviously, I don't know whether he'd been born wild or he'd been dumped. But what we noticed him, it's a long time ago now, but effectively we noticed him around, and he kept sort of coming around the house, and you couldn't get near him at all. As soon as you went anywhere near him, he'd outside the house, he'd run off. But if you left the door open, he'd sort of come to the door and have a look, and over several months Lady Zara used to just put food out near the door, and eventually he started eating the food and he'd start to come in, and what he used to like to do was actually to come in and watch television. He'd come in and sit in front of the television and watch it. He'd just sit there, staring at the screen. But what he didn't like is if you shut the door, he'd huff. He'd go, you know, it'd make a sort of huffing sort of noise, and he really didn't like it if his escape route was cut off. But he was like that for, I think probably about 1.5 years, I think. And then at one point he disappeared for about 3 or 4 days, and when he came back, he came to the door, and he just meowed for about 30 minutes flat out. It was almost like he was telling you where he'd been. And then next day he basically came in through the cat door, which was kind of unusual, and moved in. Well, he went out obviously and came back in and whatever. He wasn't bothered, and about 3 or 4 days later, I was sat on the settee one night watching television. He came in, sat watching television, got up, turned around, jumped on my knee and went to sleep. So for about 3 hours then I couldn't move, which for me is quite painful. You know, after about 3 hours it was kind of, no choice, sorry Junior, but you have to move. But yeah, he moved in, and he's stayed with us ever since. And yeah, so a feral cat, you could not have, you couldn't, well, you could have put your hand near him, but you wouldn't dare when he was first around, and even. For the rest of the time, you used to, I don't know if you said before, but you used to have to, if you wanted to stroke him, you had to ask his permission. And I'm not joking. The way you ask Junior permission is you make sure he's seen you, and you put your hand in front of his face, sort of, you know, if you like, about 1 inch or 2 away. If he gives you permission, he dips his head so you can stroke him. If he doesn't dip his head, move your hand, because about 10 seconds later he'll go for it, or he'd go for it. He'd either go for it with his teeth or with his claws. And if if you tried to stroke him without asking his permission, he would just go at you with whatever he could get on you, claws, teeth, the lot. So you actually had to ask his permission. And if he was on your knee, you still to ask him permission. And he even now, he doesn't like being stroked too much. He only likes it for a little bit. Nowadays, he will actually... he starts to... If he wants stroking, he jumps up on you. He starts putting his claws in you. If you stroke him, he settles down. If you stop, he gets up and puts his claws in you. And you've got to get the balance. You do it enough so he doesn't start sticking his claws in, but you don't do it too much that he gets off. But about it must be about 14 months ago now. We moved, and we moved into the studio here, and since we've been here, Junior is almost a completely different cat. You can pick him up. I mean, in fact, I think you may have seen me pick him up, and I can hold him. He'll lay up the front. He wants to put his paws on my shoulder, if you like. He likes to hold on there, and he's got his sort of face near mine, if you like. Before we moved here, I would not have dared do that. He would have bitten me or clawed my face, something like that. I just wouldn't have trusted him. Nowadays, I can actually pick him up and turn him over on his back, which is something that I couldn't have done before. So, since we've moved here, he's a lot more calmer. Yeah. Well, with the cats, when they put the paws on your shoulder, with Junior, he sort of lays diagonally, if you like, on me, and he puts his claws in. Obviously, he doesn't feel particularly safe. He's trusting enough that he'll let me pick him up, but he doesn't feel safe enough that he's not going to fall over. So his claws go in my shoulder, which is can be a bit painful. Theo, when I pick him up on the morning, I pick him up just like you'd pick up maybe a baby under the arms, if you know. I pick Theo up under his arms, and I sit him here, and he's vertically on me, and I hold him, and he's got his head underneath my chin half the time, and he doesn't put his claws in, I'm glad to say, but because he is one that uses his claws quite a bit. Felix, as I say, can't pick him up, and Emmy is I don't know, she kind of tolerates being picked up, but she doesn't kind of trust you. So, you know, you can't turn her over or anything like that. She's very wary. So what I'm doing here is hollowing out the mouth. What I will be doing is carving this. I'll be carving away from here, but the mouth cavity is still going to be there, so it's easier to do it at this point. Just because I've got all the drawing. Although, having said which, it may be a mistake to have done it at this point, but we'll find out. I've never done a Gibberer, and I've never carved a mouth cavity, so it may well be that I will have to take care that I don't basically knock any of these teeth off. Right. It would be good while I'm doing this to have an air extractor, but I like running the vacuum basically. Just to get rid of the dust whilst I'm working, but it's noisy. It's how you pick the logo. Okay. You've got quite a lot of remotes there available, haven't you, Vicky? Let me just put the vacuum on this. I'm just going to mute the microphone. And remember to unmute it again. So there we go. Got some teeth in it now. These look quite fearsome. What I might have to do at some point is put black in there. We'll do some more on that later on, but that's the main sort of thing, right? So we're about half. That's right. So. I am at this point just thinking about how to go about doing what I need to do now, which is carve the Gibberer, because this is basically where we start. So I am playing with an idea about what to do. So, and I'm using here is something called a V gouge. It's called a V gouge because it's V-shaped and it's a gouge. Who would have known? So I am doing really is just outlining the base of the teeth around the gums really. And what I'm going to do is do some carving on the teeth, I think, to keep the what I'm trying to do here is keep the shapes that I've got and the drawing that I've got whilst I carve it, so I don't have to continuously redraw it, which is time consuming to say the least. And I'm just trying to sort of work out in my own mind as I'm doing this here how to go about doing that. Well, I've just outlined the teeth here, so if I carve downwards, as long as I don't go past the outline, I've still got the outline, so I can sort of start to shape the angle of the face with the teeth and then gradually sort of just build on that. It's kind of what I'm thinking of. because it's kind of like the teeth are below the gums, which is below the lips. I could do this with a rotary cutter, but I actually wouldn't get as sharp a line. Now, V-gouges are quite nice because you can change direction with them quite easily. You can go around a curve. Do I paint them afterwards? Carvings I prefer to leave natural wood. I don't generally even varnish them or anything like that, because I like the way the wood kind of ages and sort of changes colour. But having said which, the first carving I ever did on stream, which was of a rose, the stream did persuade me to paint that one. It looks quite good. So the answer really becomes one of I don't really know. With Amber, the owl, did apply a little bit of pyrography to her, so her beak and her eyes, I think the tips of her claws as well, but we just applied a little bit of pyrography to her so they were black. And again, it looks okay. So in respect to this one, I don't actually know what we'll do. Might paint it, might not. I may even let you lot decide. But I with carvings, I tend to like them carved. Is it something that you have any particular preference for, Vicky? Do you like them one way or the other? Yes, you can do that, indeed. And I guess that's kind of. You can. It depends on what you also mean as well. No, the answer is yes. You can do that. You get two kinds of stain. You get coloured stain, so you can actually sort of get like blue and red and yellow, or you get sort of stain which is coloured sort of mahogany and different wood colours, if you like. So again, it depends on the subject. One other thing that you can do with it is you can apply watercolour paints. So an inks, for example. Now, watercolour paints tend to be slightly better, and you can also apply them using watercolour pencils and then water over the top. And of course the colour sinks into the wood, so it sort of stains the wood a little bit. And inks definitely sort of stain the wood, but of course it's like blotting paper, they spread a little bit. But yes, you then get the applying those sorts of things like the stains or the inks or even the watercolours, you get the grain of the wood showing through, which is I guess what you were thinking of. You stick to the wood colours. Alright, Wolfie, have a good evening. Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, because it's a variation of monochrome. is using wood colours. It's not something though I will be doing with this one, mainly because I don't have any and they don't come in small tins. I get big tins of wood stain, and big tins of wood stain are not cheap. That really probably could do with cutting out. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here is just go around inside of the lip. Do not do that. There we go. Yeah, yeah. If I just spread sawdust all over my carpet. If you take, I mean, this was the first ever carving that I did on stream, and I did it on ash without anything to clamp it to the desk with, which I very quickly realised was a mistake actually, because ash is a really hard wood. If you're talking about hard wood to carve, this is really hard. That's why this is a super shallow relief, because I was not going to dig it down any more than that. That was really hard to do, partly because it wasn't clamped down. But even when I did clamp it down, it's still really a hard wood to carve. You kind of need mallet-based chisels, I think, to carve ash. But this is just simple colours. They're not shade. They're not any shade of wood or anything. But it just gives it a really completely different look. Yeah. And this was just a scrap board that I just happened to have, and it is the first time I'd ever painted carving, and I think because it's so shallow, it would have not looked as good if I hadn't done. I can't actually remember what it looked like now, but the painting just brings it up out of the wood a bit. Thank you. Roses are actually a relatively easy thing to carve. I'll maybe have to do another rose at some point in basswood. what? I think a rose actually was a basswood rose was actually the first thing I ever carved. I am just concentrating on this. I do not want this chisel to run away, by which I mean sort of make an uncontrolled movement, but I'm trying to stay on the line. So normally I'd have my right arm or hand on the piece of work to support the chisel. But what I'm doing here is I'm pressing down with my left hand and I'm pressing down on the chisel. That holds it in the work but also helps to stop it run away. And I am not putting a lot of pressure. It might look like I'm putting more than I actually am, but I'm not putting a lot of pressure on with my right hand. I don't need it, the chisel's sharp. So this is really just about controlling the movement. Now if I do make a mistake, I'm going to carve a lot of this wood away, so it's not as much of an issue as if this was near its final carve, but right, and now what we'll start to do now is carve away from this. And I'm kind of thinking about how to do it. Let's try that. So what I'm doing is using the V-gouge to carve this. And I was just experimenting really, because I want something that kind of looks a bit like fur, but to do that I kind of need, and I'm not going to draw sort of individual hairs. So what I'm doing is using this V-gouge and effectively just sort of getting clumps of hair. I guess is the best way of describing it. So it just looks kind of rough. There then. That's his foot, and that's lower down. So, and that foot is on that. That's going to be fun. Now this at the moment is much too high, but I'm kind of start high and keep going down. I kind of get to have a bit of fun really with this, because you don't normally carve with sort of relative abandon, to just sort of just drive the chisel through there. Okay, I'm going to have to do it that way. So I'm learning as I go along really, and one of the things I'm learning here is don't cross cut too much. What it does is it knocks out a lot of the sort of hairs that you've put in. Good job I left some spare there. What I will do, I'm not going to do it just this moment in time, but what I will do is sort of cut in and sort of separate out clumps on the edge here. Otherwise it won't look quite as good or as natural as it should do. So what I'm hoping I'm going to get here is the face shape, if you like. So I'm gradually going to sort of carve this down. I'm going to then bring the lip down a little bit and the gum down a little bit, and just keep going. It may not be the most economical way of carving this. You know, the most economical way would be to sort of flat carve that down into get the shapes and then apply this over the top. But I don't know what I'm doing, so this seems the most logical way to me to at least see what I'm doing as I do it, so to build the effect up slowly so I can see whether it's working or not. I have no idea how I'm going to do the foot just yet. So the decision as always when you relief carving is how far do you go down? And the answer is always just as far as you need to do without going too far. And I don't actually know what the answer to either of those two questions is. I'll maybe know it when I get there. One of the difficulties you've got with this sort of thing is the chisel has a tendency to want to keep going in the same grooves that you've already made, and that's not necessarily what you want to actually happen, because you're trying to create something that looks different to that. So it's kind of the way I'm kind of doing it is notice where the big grooves are. Driving the chisel very slightly off the angle of the groove, so slightly across, but I'm also not putting a great deal of pressure on the chisel so that I don't actually create deep grooves. The deeper ones would be harder to avoid. Also, they actually don't match the hair texture look very well either. Now, what I'm going to do now is I switch to a round a U gouge here as opposed to a V gouge, so that I can do around the lips. So I'm doing it in steps. So I'll do the lips, and then I'll come back and do the gum, which obviously is lower than the lips. So. Now ideally I'd use a flat chisel for this, but I don't have a flat chisel this small size. So this is about tiny, really controlled movements. Using as little force as I need. Well, as little force as I can get away with, really, because I do not want to sort of drive this gouge right across the work. Now I've already determined that the highest point is his nose, so just about here is the highest point of the lips, and debatable whether here is at the same height. I'm not sure as or whether it's sort of slightly further back in the piece. I haven't quite worked that out, and I might just see how it comes out. Again, I can use the premise of, or the technique of carving it at the same height as this, and if I don't like it, I can make it lower. Now, whilst I don't ever particularly want to, throw a piece away in the round file, if I make that big a mistake, then ultimately that's what will have to happen. But I'm sort of trying to minimise that as much as I can by doing things like, taking the least risk option, like leaving this at the same height until I determine it doesn't want to be. Usually they paint them, Vicky. There is actually quite a lot of colours available for roses, especially these days. Because at one time, and it's a good few years ago, you could not, for example, get blue roses. You could get red, crimson, yellow, orange, white, even a brown sort of colour, violet, lilac colours. You could get lots of them like that, but what you couldn't get is blue. And what they used to use is, well, one of the techniques of using it was food dye. You get a white rose, food dye, spray it. Well, you can actually paint it, but you've got to be careful not to use too much. But spray it with something like an airbrush, or there was. You can use a spray which works like an airbrush, but you have a straw that you blow through, and spray them and dye them. So it's quite possible that what they've done is do something like take white roses and use food dye, or maybe there's commercial flower dyes available, I don't know any these days, and actually sort of just literally paint the roses. I know in the local garden centre here they had some heathers which at first looked like multicoloured. They were red, yellow, green, blue, and it wasn't until you looked a lot closer you could actually see they'd actually been sprayed. So they were green with a colour on top of them, and that's fine, but after sort of 2 months the colour disappears and that beautiful colour that you bought has gone, and it's kind of like, that's a cheat, really. No, I don't think so, because I don't think the colour. You might be right. I don't actually know, but I don't think the colour would actually come through. Putting it in the water. If the rose was growing, so then maybe, but plants are really good at filtering water out of stuff that's in the water, if you see what I mean. So they're really good at sort of taking up, like, you don't get sort of mud-coloured roses because it filters, the roots filter the water as they're coming up. Cut roses, I don't really know. I mean, the thing about any about any plant, when you cut it, you've got to put it in water straight away, because the capillary action, which is what sucks the water up towards the leaves, if you cut a plant and leave it, then you get basically an air bubble goes in the capillaries and stops water coming up. So whenever you go to put flowers in water that you've bought in the shop, cut flowers for example, one of the things you do is probably cut about an inch off the bottom of them, because that's where most of the air is trapped, and then immediately put them in the water so that again the water can get into them. But they don't really take up a lot of water. Most of the water that you see a vase going down, for example, it's evaporating, and the evaporation is good for the plants because the leaves taking some water, but I wouldn't have thought they'd actually be enough to colour, but maybe. In my youth, I used to work in a garden centre, and they had a florist there as well, florist shop. So that's how I know how the roses. They used to get blue roses back then. There are these days though varieties of blue rose. When they first developed the blue rose varieties, an actual blue rose stem used to be about 30 or 40 pounds for one stem of rose, just because of the colour was so unusual, and the plants were actually at that point very rare. Now I'm talking about 30, 40 odd years ago now, 30 or 40 pounds back then was a lot of money. Well, it still is a lot of money, but you know what I mean. Okay, so that's a little bit. Okay, right, well. I've carved the lips down a little bit, so now what I'm doing is carving the edge of the fur that meets the lips down so that it's below the lips again. And I really am just sort of taking random swipes with the chisel here. I say sort of because I'm picking a high spot and driving the chisel through it, but I'm not sort of working to any particular plan. And I'm certainly not sort of looking at a picture going, oh, I need to put a hair there. Okay, well, that I think $8 Canadian each. That's not bad. I don't know the conversion rates, but I'm kind of thinking that in the UK, blue roses, I think I haven't seen them for a while because I haven't been looking, but about sort of £6. That's UK pounds. So $8 Canadian, $10 American kind of sounds about similar. Now, sort of in today's money, sort of, that whilst that sort of sounds like this, not too far off, sort of 30 or 40 UK pounds, it sounds like only 25%, or less. Then that sort of 30 or 40 pound, back then would probably be the equivalent of about £300 or £400 now. So they've come down quite a bit. There's some really pretty colours as well. I've got some really saturated blues, and you've got some really nice pale blues into the cyan as well. So they're really sort of developing the colours. Of course, in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. In about 2 weeks' time, those prices will probably at least double, or even more, because you've got Valentine's Day shortly, and the price of flowers goes up considerably for Valentine's Day. That is partly because the growers put the prices up because it's Valentine's Day, as do the shops. But it is a time when they make a lot of their profit in those sorts of romantic flowers. They make sort of about 75% of their profit for the year, just at the one time. Right. So I'm stopping for tonight. I don't think we've done too bad. Got the main background sort of in a workable state. Main background as in the circle here. We've got some more stuff to add to this. As I say, plain backgrounds are distracting. We're going to add something to this, some sort of just filigree type design. This bit across the top here is being rough carved, and I'm leaving it that way. I'll rough carve around here a little bit as well, just to do something with it. Still not sure about that jewel. Really, I'm not sure. So anybody who's watching has any thoughts as to whether we actually should put that on, and if I do put it on, whether to put the number on it, or whether to actually carve it off so both sides are the same. We just do like a filigree design around there, and just so that the thing is just all about the Gibberer set in the middle, which is, you can see already, is, even though this is going to carve more, he is in front of this round frame. So if this was like a window, he's coming out of it, which is the sort of thing I'm kind of aiming for with the teeth. And what we will do is undercut those as well a little bit, but we won't do that until almost finished, so that they actually sort of look pointy. No matter how you look at them, they look pointy. They don't look like we've just sort of carved in. But I think we'll do this tomorrow night, which is Friday, and then on Saturday take a rest on Saturday, so that I don't get neck pains, things like that, because I'm leaning over a lot, and that is quite stressful on necks, and you don't need to get any neck pain. So what we might do on Saturday night, for example, is switch and do some magic dots for an evening, or possibly two, and then come back to carving. There is no distinct hurry to complete this, So we can take our time, which is what I am doing anyway, and enjoy the process. No, thank you for joining, Vicky, and both chatting and watching. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. So for those people who may not know, the stream tomorrow night will be starting as soon after 7 PM UK time. It's GMT or UTC if you're more familiar with that, and we'll go on for about 2 hours until around about 9 o'clock UK time. And I may be a little bit late, I try not to be, but I may be, and if I am, it's because I'm having something to eat. And I either start the stream late by having something to eat before it, or I finish it early because I'm hungry and I want to go eat. So either way, but I usually try and make sure I start as close to 7 PM as I can. I'll just take a little bit of time to set this sort of stuff up. There's a mat on the floor to catch the rubbish. There's this is going to be put on the desk. I've got to get the chisels out and everything else and whatever. And putting all this stuff away is even worse because I've got to vacuum all this stuff up and any that's escaped and on the desk, and it takes a fair bit of cleaning up. So, what I was also going to say was, of course, if you want to see any of the earlier carving of this, it is available at the moment still. Most of it, I think, is still here on Twitch on the VODs. If any is not there, and it's a recording, so it's in real time. So if you want to see any that isn't there, almost all the old recordings are also archived onto YouTube, Zaraganart, on YouTube, youtube.com/Zaraganart, nice and easy. And you can see they're in series as well, so you can easily pick the series, and if you really want to watch it, there is something like 400 hours plus of, no, there's more than that, it's more like 700 or 800 hours of videos, about 450 actual videos. Now it's broadcasts, but they reach about 2 hours, that's about 800 hours. Which will take a lot of watching if you really wanted to. If you're not following the channel, it'd be fantastic if you actually did, because it does help the channel. The more followers, the more people have confidence in following, and then it's more people get to see all this lovely stuff. And the other thing I was going to mention, since you just said good to know, there's also a Facebook page, which is of course facebook.com/Zaraganart, and they're everywhere. And there's an Etsy page if you're interested in the jewellery, which we haven't done for a little while, but that is in there. And as time allows, I will get some of the pyrography into the Etsy page, zaraganart.etsy.com. That was the other way around. And of course, bottom right of my screen there is zaraganart.com, is my website. And again, as time allows, I put updates onto that. I've not done any for a while. It is time, but I got some, but time is short. I don't have very much on an evening after I've streamed. I've got about half an hour before it's time to go to bed. So once I get all the bits and pieces done and cleaned up and things. And the final thing I was going to mention, of course, is if you would care to consider supporting the stream, there's the 2 buttons at the top right which allow you to do that, either the bits or the subscriptions. It's not mandatory, you don't have to. It'd be gratefully received if you do, but you are quite welcome to watch without that. It's not required at all in any shape or form. But things like wood tools are not fantastically cheap, and just as an example, these chisels, this one's still got its price on. UK pounds, £11.35, and that was 6 years ago. That's just for one chisel without a handle. But there you go. That explains any contributions that come into the channel go towards. So that's it. That's my advert. I'll hand you over to the Twitch advert, which is sure to follow the stream once I stop the stream. So thank you for watching. Hope to see you on the next one tomorrow evening. Bye for now.